And having said that, it's a pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Harald Gröger from IBM. He'll be talking about data fabric or data mesh, similarities, differences, and optimal possible combination of both. You're a senior data and AI technical specialist at IBM, and you have plenty of experience in the field, so we're all curious to get some more insights from you. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. Data fabric or data mesh, that's one of the topics I'm working on. And I saw some confusion at customers in customer projects, what the data fabric is, what a data mesh is, if you can combine the two. Once I got a quote from a customer who told me when I offered a data fabric discussion, we don't want to talk about data fabric, we have a data mesh, we don't need a data fabric. And that's the reason why I thought it might be an interesting topic to talk about. And we'll start with an introduction. What is a data fabric? What is a data mesh? And then talk about differences, possible combinations, and so on. So, what is a data fabric? Not a new term, a few years old. I took these two pictures from Gartner and Forrester. I hope the fonts are not too small. I walk you through the pictures, starting in the bottom left with the Gartner one. And on the top you see the data sources, different data sources, somewhere cloud, on-prem, structured, unstructured, whatever. And on the top of the picture, data consumers. And that's the basic idea of the data fabric. Self-service is the term here. The data consumers should be enabled to get access to all these data sources and do whatever they want to do with it. Analysis, machine learning, BI reports, whatever. And when you look at the colored lines here, boxes on the Gartner slide, there are different technologies that you can use, and that's already one thing. Data fabric is about technologies. Data mesh is more about architecture. I'll come to that. You have different technologies here. You have a data catalog, which we already heard about in the previous speeches. Knowledge graphs that make it easier to understand the data. The color coding means something here. Green meaning this are mature technologies, data preparation, data delivery layer. And other things, recommendation engines, knowledge graph, I already talked about. And then there's the red part, which is not so mature, which is metadata activation. That's the red box. And if you look at the gray parts in between, most of them are also talking about metadata. And that's an important part in the data fabric area, to understand the data, to get data about the data, metadata. Possibly automated, I'll come to that. And metadata activation means that there's some automatism in there. So for example, if you can automatically detect that the data that comes from the data sources and should be analyzed by the data consumer is somehow GDPR related, personal identifiable information and so on. If that can automatically be detected, automatically tagged, and then maybe for certain users the data automatically masked, and for others be viewable as clear data, that's what meant here with the metadata activation. On the right side, the Forrester view on that, just a few remarks there. There are also some boxes. And in each of the boxes, if you look at them in the lower right, you see artificial intelligence, machine learning. That's part of the stuff I just talked about, this automation, that not people have to find out what the data is about, where is data that has to be masked and so on, but some automation there. Also, the data catalog we already talked about. Yeah, I think that were the remarks I wanted to make here. And the idea on the text above is, as I already said, self-service data, providing technology with the data fabric to enable users to get access to the data that they need access to in an automated way. I talked about machine learning, metadata. Of course, you have to do data integration. One topic I didn't talk about, or two words here, secure and trusted. If you want to enable all the employees in your company, maybe even beyond that, business partners and customers, to access all the data in a self-service way, of course the data should be correct, should be trusted, trustable, the quality should be high, you should be able to explain why the data is how it is. That's again part of the technology here in the data fabric area. And then security and data privacy. Of course, not everybody should be able to access all of the data. That's also something you should, or you have to take care about here in the data fabric part. So that's the data fabric technology. multiple parts, modules. You don't have to use all of them. Yeah, you can pick what you need out of this toolbox here. Data mesh, that's the original article. You may have seen this graphic, and in the bottom of the slides, I have always the links to the original sources. So that's the original article, data mesh. And if you have a look at the title here of this paper, it doesn't position itself, data mesh, against the data fabric. Not at all. It positions the data mesh against a data lake. We already heard about data lakes, so these big things where all the data flows to, structured, unstructured. You might not really understand what's in there, not always good quality, not always metadata. And that's what the idea was with the data mesh, to break out this monolithic data lake into something more distributed. And when you look at the graphic again, in the middle part, the idea here is that the lines of business, the departments, the parts of the company that understand and own the data, yeah, they of course then understand it best, and that they should be in the role of providing data products, services, serve this data, their own data, that they understand to others. So not the central IT providing something, but each department, each part of the business having a look at its own data, thinking about what would be worthwhile to provide as a data product, as a service to others, and then doing so. Which in turn means that all these lines of businesses then have to take care about stuff that in former days was centrally done by IT. So here the third bullet point, data cleansing, looking for data quality, doing deduplication, enriching the data, and all that stuff. That would then be part of in this distributed world for each of these domains. Yeah, that was that. So distributed data architecture. So we are talking more about data architecture here in the data mesh part, and data fabric, more technology. But there are also not only distributed parts, these are in the middle, but also centralized ones at the top and the bottom. The top one, data governance. I mean, yeah, I think it's obvious that somebody centralized in a company has to define what data has to be masked, for example, what are the rules for GDPR, central standards. And then at the very bottom, a data platform where the data is stored that may be centralized. Maybe also these different lines of businesses have different data storages, but I think most of the time there will be a centralized data platform there. Very important point in the text part about in the middle, discoverable. We heard about data catalogs already, or then also in other presentations. When these domains, these lines of businesses provide data products, yeah, the other ones in the company have to find them. So you could have one catalog for each data domain. But I think it's of value to also have a central catalog where everybody can look and find out, and then maybe go for the details in the other catalogs. Yeah, so maybe just one more thing regarding data quality and how old is the data, who is responsible, all that stuff. Such a kind of service level agreement that then would be also part of these domains, of the domain users. So that's, if you have good eyes, you may be able to see that that's of middle 2019, this original article introducing data mesh. There's a new study, and that's in German. I just copied the stuff out of the Bitkom paper, which is of middle of this year, so 3 years later. And yeah, it's still a very similar thing. There are no differences. So can you see the light green thing? Yeah, where it says distributed in the middle. These are these data products with the data owners in the domains, decentralized. And then again, on the top and on the bottom, you have the centralized part, data governance as a centralized part, and also this data platform where the data is really stored. And just one thing I want to mention in addition to what I already said on the previous slide, at the very bottom right, organization and culture. So as I said, this is an architectural thing, and you need to convince the employees that it's worthwhile. You maybe even have to do some reorganization to move resources from the central IT to line of business, maybe where that makes sense, and to work on the kind of data culture in your company if you want to go with the data mesh. I think that's what I wanted to add on this slide, actually. Coming to Gartner paper from end of last year. Data fabric or data mesh, same or different. So yeah, more or less the title of my presentation. And I can't walk you through all of the stuff here, just a few highlights, focus on a few things. When you look at the top of this table, in the very top part, they are the common things what data fabric and data mesh have in common. And there on the right side, Gartner says it's less than 1.5% adoption in the addressable market. So this is now, what did I say, end of last year. This number might be higher or will be higher now, but it's only a small percentage. So not everybody has a data fabric or a data mesh. This is still a new market, both of it. And there's a way to go. And there will be improvements and changes. So that's not a fixed technology that everybody has. When we look at the business proposal, data mesh, data fabric, in the data mesh part, they both talk about data products to start this way. So the idea is in both ways, with the architecture of the data mesh and with the technology of a data fabric, to provide data products. On the data mesh side is a business design. So I said the line of business, the departments that hold the data, they think about which data they could put to use as a data service for others, which would be worthwhile. So it's kind of bottom up. They provide the data products for others, and then hopefully others will use them, and they hopefully will be the right ones. On the data fabric, it's more the top-down approach, where central IT often provides the data products, and then, yeah, same thing. They hopefully will be used, and hopefully it will be worthwhile for the rest of the company. When you look at data quality and stewardship, and a difference here that I already talked about is, I start on the data fabric side. We saw that in the Forrester graph in the very beginning on the first slide. The idea and the hope is that as much as possible can be automized with machine learning, and with artificial intelligence. So to use the tooling to do the automation, and to, yeah, not to be necessary that the humans will do everything, which might be the case in the data mesh, but of course only also in a data mesh side, which is an architecture you are able to use tools. That is something that, from my point of view, also should be organized centrally. So each department, each line of business could use its own tools for a catalog and for automating things, but I think it would make sense to have at least some central guidance, not to avoid having too many tools. So just let me think. I think that's it with the table I wanted to say. What Gartner says here in the text about in the middle, it makes sense that a data mesh utilizes technology features and a function of some software stuff, and a data fabric can support here. And then again, I've already said that data mesh is an architecture, data fabric is a technology, and you can combine the two, which makes sense. So 2 more slides to go. Just briefly, this one again, the link in the lower part, that's somewhere in LinkedIn. The idea here is that the green parts are from the data mesh side. So you see data products, you see self-service, you see data mesh key concepts like data domains. And then on the other side, there are data fabric capabilities. So you have to integrate the data somehow. You can do that physically with ETL tools that we have for quite a while. You can also do that virtually with data virtualization, which I'll talk about on the last slide a bit more. You can combine the two, and you see here an orange box in the middle, which is the central part, with global data catalog and global integration and global metadata and so on. And you also see local parts in the lower in line of business, in the domains. And as I said, it makes sense to integrate these two, maybe get the metadata important for everybody out of the local catalogs and the global catalogs, not using 10 different data integration tools, but maybe 1 or 2 or 3, but not 10 or 20 and other parts. Which leads me to the last slide, and I have a few seconds to go. I think, and the message I want to give you is that data fabric and data mesh can and should be combined. You can and will get value if you use both of these. You should have a look at both, not only at one of them. And what I wanted to depict here on the last slide is how, if you decided for a data mesh architecture, how you could use data fabric technologies. And again, just a few highlights from my point of view here. I start with data collection, data virtualization. Already talked about that. So not copying the data again in a redundant way from a source to somewhere, to a data lake, data warehouse, but leaving it where it is. Being able to join the data, maybe join data between Hadoop and a relational database and real-time data, whatever. And providing an integrated view to the data consumers, as I said, without having to store the data redundantly again. Then moving on to the organize part, this little screenshot here talks about data quality and data classification in an automated way. That's the machine learning and artificial intelligence thing. That you automatically get the information where you have, I don't know, emails, for example, which is an easiest thing. You can just use a regex to find out where is email data in your data sources, which is personally identifiable information. You could define a rule then, which says this should not be readable by certain people in the company, but by others. This is this data masking I'm just talking about. That you say if you have a certain role in the organization and the data has a data classification of personal identifiable, then it should be masked. Next thing, metadata, relationship between metadata objects. So the idea here is, of course you have tables and files and whatever, you know what the column names are. You have the data classification I just talked about. You can add business terms, which I think is helpful. The idea here is if you want to find out, for example, about customer churn, who will leave my company, do business with others, you can use a business term to find out where the data really resides, in which data sources, and then do your analysis and so on. I'm hurrying up because I'm over time. Data lineage is a quite old topic. So data lineage meaning where does the data come from, where does it go to? What is the real source data that went through different stages until it then ended up in the BI report or in the machine learning model? That's one thing that you can do with data lineage. I want just to add one more. Different users in your companies have different requirements. So for example, a data scientist normally wants to work with the source data, with the real source data before doing anything, before doing data quality enhancements and so on. So the very left in the data lineage. On the other hand, somebody building a BI report may want to have the data quality arranged data for, and you could see that in the data lineage here. And then coming to the end, automated machine learning. So the idea here is if you don't have enough data scientists, especially in the data mesh area, in this different lines of business, there are possibilities just to use labeled historical data and again, trying to find out what customer churn, who will churn from a customer side. You can do that in a very automated way, just providing a file as an input data and what you want to predict, and then it starts and tells you something, and you can predict the future. I talked about trust. What you can do is after you ran this automatic thing, then again having a look at a Jupyter notebook, which does exactly what it does. So you can check and change and enhance these automated things. And that's again something I can think of in the data domain parts of the data mesh. And the very last thing is about bias of machine learning models when you provide these. are you really sure that, for example, you know, these common examples, if you want to work for a company that males are preferred against females or all these things, that you can automatically check if you have a bias in your machine learning model, which then in a data mesh approach comes from the different line of business departments, or if you're fine and don't have to do anything. I hope I could give you some impressions regarding data mesh, data fabric, hopefully also for your company a few ideas how to look at. You have all the you will get all the slides, you have the links if you want to go to topics deeper, and of course I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.